Yeah, what's up? What's going on, everybody? Yeah, this is me, Bruce Hope, and I'm back with another episode of the Format Podcast. We're supposed to have a guest this week, but that didn't work out. So guess what you get? You get to hear and see me kicking my original thoughts on what's going on in the world as the world of the NFL for another week. And we'll work on getting that guest back hopefully next week sometime. But anyway, before we go ahead and talk some NBA and NFL, we will go ahead and knock out the particulars. And you know what they are. First, obviously, you're watching on YouTube. Thank you so much for checking in. Please click that subscribe button in the lower right corner of your screen. Also, click that notification bell so you can be notified when new content comes out. And if you like the show afterwards, go ahead and give us that thumbs up. Give us the like, all right? If you want the audio-only version of the podcast, you can find it anywhere that you get your audio podcast. Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Podbean, Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get it, you can find us there. Just type in The Format Podcast. We'll pop right up. We're also available on iHeartRadio. All right, so if you want the audio only, you can do that. If you're on social media, catch me on Twitter at Bruce F.A. Hope. That's at Bruce F.A. Hope. Instagram at The Format Podcast, at The Format Podcast. And if you want to email me directly, you can do that by emailing theformatpodcast@outlook.com, theformatpodcast@outlook.com. Give me your thoughts. Let me know what you think of the show. Any interaction is great. I appreciate it. And it lets me know you're listening. Finally, if you are doing the audio-only podcast thing, please go ahead, give us that 5-star rating. It helps boost us in the algorithm, makes us easier to find. And if you love the show, please go ahead, share it. Don't keep it to yourself, all right? So all that said, you know what time it is. Sit back, relax, and listen up to episode 107 of The Format. What's up, everybody? So, it is football season, of course, but before we get to some NFL talk, we're going to talk a little bit of NBA. As you know, we got some major storylines going on right now, and as well, the NBA preseason is officially underway with training camps and all that. Media day has already happened. So just going to give you some quick thoughts on that. Obviously, one of the biggest ones of the offseason is Ben Simmons, right? So if you remember last we saw Ben Simmons, he was pretty much stinking it up in the Eastern Conference semifinals against the Hawks, not wanting to shoot, giving up easy layups, costing his team's games. Right now, I'm not going to say he's the only one that costs his team's games. It's not generally one player. Last we also saw the team star Joel Embiid have like 8 turnovers in the deciding game against Atlanta. So it's not all on Ben Simmons, but where Ben Simmons comes into it, obviously, unless you're living under a rock and, in terms of being a basketball fan, he has demanded a trade through his representation, which, of course, is Clutch Sports and Rich Paul, and basically said that he is never going to suit up for the 76ers again. Now, the 76ers are not able to kind of get the trade that they want, so the other option is trying to, coddle Ben Simmons back to the team, but he's making it clear through his representation, he doesn't want to talk to him. He doesn't want to see him. He has no interest in playing for them ever again going forward. And what's my take on this, right? Very simply put, Ben Simmons is being extremely unprofessional, right? Now, this is amazing to me. I see a whole lot of former players, current players, people involved in the NBA, and they're all basically on Team Ben Simmons saying that, Embiid was wrong after that loss for basically throwing Ben Simmons under the bus, saying that the game turned when he had the layup or dunk and he passed it off instead of finishing it, likely because he was afraid to go through the free throw line and try to knock down those free throws. We know he's one of the worst playoff free throw shooters ever. Also, Doc Rivers, when asked after the game if you can win a championship with Ben Simmons as your point guard, him just saying, I honestly don't know. So, those are two things that people say his teammate Embiid and his coach Doc Rivers should have answered that question differently, but they're blaming it on them. And, for my money, they told it how it is, right? And I guess you can't always say what you're thinking, but Ben Simmons, to me, he's being extremely unprofessional. He's refusing to speak to them, refusing to see him, says he's never going to suit up again. And where's my problem, right? We talk about all this player empowerment stuff and blah, blah, blah. I think the NBA has always been a players' league. We know that. But I think they've given players too much power in that players are in a position now where they don't want to be held accountable for the most part. They don't want to be coached hard. There are many players who will take the money and then, demand a trade or what have you. For instance, Ben Simmons is on the first year this year of his new deal, and he's already demanding out. And I'm like, what are you doing, bro? You took the money, right? You took the money. And so now he wants out. And so for me, teams really need to take a stand. They need to say, yo, we are not catering to you, right? You don't run things. I get it. The player is the draw, but at the same time, if you work somewhere, you're not signing the check. And if you're not signing the check, that means you're not in charge. So I really don't like the idea that the quote unquote player empowerment is putting players in a position where they feel like, they run the show and they can do whatever they want to do. And again, you got a guy like Ben Simmons. I think his deal is 140, 150 million over 5 years, somewhere in that range. He signed the deal. The new deal starts this year and he's already demanding out. So if I'm Philly, I'm saying, listen, you took the money, right? You're not going anywhere unless I get the deal that I want. And if you want to sit out, that's fine. I draw that line in the sand. I say, that's fine. We are going to fine you or you're not getting paid, however it works, whether they fine him for not showing up or they just don't pay him for not showing up. I mean, these guys, when you're the number one pick in the draft, even though there's a, rookie wage structure and all that, you still got plenty of money. So theoretically, if you were to, sit out a year until you got what you wanted, it wouldn't hurt you, but nobody wants to give up that type of money, right? So if I'm Philly, I'm saying that's fine. You don't got to do it. If you don't want to play, you don't play. That's fine. But what I'm going to do is wait until I get the deal that I want. And if I don't, you're just going to sit there and you're not getting paid. And I guess when you live a certain lifestyle, you spend a lot of money. So eventually that's going to hit you. And, at the end of the day, billionaires who are the owners of these teams, they didn't get to be billionaires by owning these teams. They were billionaires before that. They have multiple revenue streams, much more so than the average player, which is why, again, in labor disputes, generally the owners are going to win because you don't have enough players who can go without pay long enough to fight that. So basically, millionaires versus billionaires usually win. So here's the other problem I have with this whole Ben Simmons thing, right? This is all his fault. This is his fault, right? We know Ben Simmons is uber talented, but what's the problem here? He is a guy who hasn't worked to get better. He is a guy that seems lackadaisical when it comes to playing the game. He is a guy that doesn't seem to want to play in a way commensurate with his natural abilities, right? So if you're not doing, you being Ben Simmons, what you're supposed to do in terms of advancing yourself as a player and being a weapon for your team, how can you get upset when somebody calls you out for that? I never understood. You're not doing what you're supposed to do. Somebody calls you out for it and then you're mad. Like, that doesn't make any sense. He's so talented and he just doesn't seem to care. All of this could have been avoided, Ben Simmons. All of this could have been avoided, but that's on you. So now you're going to cost yourself money because, again, if it's me and I'm the Sixers, I draw a line in the sand because if you let him get away with this, what you're also doing is setting the precedent for future players if they decide that they want to behave in this fashion, right? And so what you got to do is draw your line in the sand and say, nah, you're not running things. We're going to get what we want out of this and what's best for the organization, or you're not going to get paid. It's that simple. Or you can suit up and be a professional. So that's how I see that. The other big topic when it comes to the NBA right now, obviously, are vaccination issues, right? So we know two cities for sure have vaccine mandates for large indoor gatherings, those being New York City and San Francisco, right? New York City, obviously the home of the Brooklyn Nets and the New York Knicks, and San Francisco, the home of the Golden State Warriors. And why do I bring up those two cities and those three teams? Because two of the major players in terms of anti-vax stances, at least for the time being, are Andrew Wiggins and Kyrie Irving, neither of which who have specifically stated why they don't want to get the vaccine. They just, as of right now, they don't want to get it. And, that's fine. I've stated on social media, I've stated among my friends who I've had this discussion with, etc. If you don't want to get the vaccine, that's fine. But guess what? You're working somewhere where the demand is that you get it. And if you don't, then that's going to affect your bottom line, your paycheck, because it affects the league, it affects your team, right? For instance, in New York City, let's say Kyrie Irving decides to maintain his stance against getting the vaccine. That means he's not going to play any home games in Brooklyn. That means minus 41 games, right? But let's just say hypothetically he's healthy for all 82. That's minus 41 games and minus whatever the playoff run is, right? So already you're losing half of that $35 million you're scheduled to make this year. On top of that, you've got at least one game in San Francisco playing against Golden State, right? So there's Golden State's got to play once in Brooklyn. You got to play once at Golden State. So you're missing one of those games. And wherever else in the league, there may be mask mandates, right? Whatever other cities. So you're costing yourself money and you're fighting against this. But at the end of the day, right? Now you got issue. Is the Players Association going to stand up for you? Maybe they're not going to be able to, right? Because this is more than just the league, right? You're dealing with the mask mandates coming from these local municipalities, right? So these are laws you're trying to defy. So now you're costing yourself money, and you haven't even stood up to say what your issue is. You're just saying, in the case of Andrew Wiggins and Kyrie Irving, both of them saying that it's not anyone's business, basically, and that they'd like to keep it private. And hey, listen, I respect that. But one of my guys I was talking to about this, he gave me a pretty good analogy. And he says, yo, listen, if I'm a nudist and the company that I'm working for has a dress code, well, either I get dressed or I don't work there, right? It's pretty simple. Generally, the people who sign the checks kind of got sway over you. And if you don't want to deal with the fact that they have sway, then they'll no longer sign your checks. Seems pretty simple to me. Quick commentary. Former ESPN and FS1 TV personality Jason Whitlock, who is generally respected sports journalist, experienced and respected. He made a kind of comment that I didn't like in terms of NBA legend Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who was he's basically saying that, these guys really need to go ahead and get vaccinated because not only are they possibly endangering themselves, they're hurting their teams, they're endangering those around them, and they're playing into the dumb jock stereotype by, in some cases, quoting mistruths and falsehoods, right? In terms of why they don't want to get the COVID-19 vaccine, right? So anyway, I bring up Jason Whitlock because he mentioned that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar sold out his faith as a Muslim by saying that guys should take the vaccine and making it clear that he was vaccinated. Now, I'm not sure how much Jason Whitlock knows about Islam. However, one of the greatest precepts of Islam is the premise of saving human life wherever possible, right? And so if the vaccine is there, and I actually looked this up, a number of Islamic scholars have, taken the stance that it is not haram or bad or impermissible for Muslims to get the COVID vaccine for that very reason, right? So apparently one of the issues is that there is the thought that there may be some type of pork gelatin used to stabilize the vaccine. And as we know, in Judaism as well as Islam, pork is a forbidden food. And so that's where you get some concerns among the Jewish people as well as the Muslims, right? Now, in doing the research, it was actually found that the majority consensus from past debates over pork gelatin use in vaccines is that it is permissible under Islamic law, as the greater harm would occur if vaccines were not used. And this is the statement from Dr. Haruna Rashid, an associate professor at the University of Sydney, right? As well, not just among Muslims, there's a similar assessment by a broad consensus of religious leaders in the Orthodox Jewish community as well. And that says, according to the Jewish law, the prohibition on eating pork or pork use is only forbidden when it's a natural way of eating it. And this is from Rabbi David Stav, chairman of Zohar, a rabbinical organization in Israel. Rabbi Stav says, if it being pork is injected into the body, not eaten through the mouth, then there's no prohibition and no problem, especially when we are concerned about sicknesses. So where I'm going with this is, Jason Whitlock, he made his commentary, but he may not have done enough research. And he's taking a shot at a guy whose opinions are extremely well respected, a guy who always does his research, and a guy who's very intelligent and learned in Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And those stances are supported by Islamic scholarly bodies as well as Orthodox Jewish scholarly bodies, that it is not impermissible under both of those faiths to take the COVID vaccine, even if there may be some use of pork gelatin in small amounts to stabilize the vaccine. So, I say that all to say, people got to be careful what they say. Just because they have a platform, it doesn't alleviate the need for research. So yeah. So that's where I am on the NBA. I'm definitely interested to see if, when guys start getting hit in the pocketbook, if they want to continue to hold out and, stand by their stay with their stances in terms of not wanting to be vaccinated. And I always say, this is America. You have the right to do what you want to do. You also have the right to understand that there will be repercussions. You don't get to just do what you want to do and not face a repercussion, right? So yeah, that's that. This is a perfect time, I actually think, to move over to the NFL. But how we're going to do that is, this is a perfect segue, because LeBron James was on Monday Night Football with Peyton and Eli the other night, and it was discussed that he was an all-state wide receiver when he was in high school. I think either his freshman and sophomore year or his freshman year, before giving up football and going solely on basketball, which, as we know, he's managed to have a fairly successful career thus far, right? But yeah, so they were discussing that. And anyway, basically what that did was lead to, for the next couple of days, discussions on the various sports outlets on whether or not LeBron James would have made a great NFL player. So for me, I say absolutely not. And there's some reasons for that. But before I get to my stance, one of the guys I listen to a lot, that I learn a lot from and really like his show, is Colin Cowherd. And he says that he believes that LeBron would have made a great NBA player because we already have a comp for him. And the comp is, former basketball star Jimmy Graham. So who is a tight end, and he was all pro a couple of times and Pro Bowl multiple times as well. But Jimmy Graham is only 6'7". LeBron is 6'9". That would make LeBron the tallest skill player in NFL history, right? Generally, you get a skill player taller than 6'7", it just doesn't work out, right? Just a factor of having to make certain moves and how your body is designed at that height, right? But maybe he would, maybe he wouldn't. The argument was that he's more athletic than Jimmy Graham. He can go up and high point balls probably better. He has a higher vertical leap. He's faster in his 40 time, and he's so big and so strong, right? So here's where I come in with my argument on LeBron in the NFL. Yes, he's so big and so strong. Was he 6'9", 260? He's probably been up to like 280. He is one of the freakiest athletes that we've ever seen in the NFL, and that's fine. However, this is a guy in the NBA who doesn't even like to get touched. Now, that could be a product of the league, the way it's officiated, the way he's officiated, but he doesn't even like to get touched. And we've seen it, by the way, if you want to see a guy who doesn't want to get touched, just go on YouTube and look up LeBron James flop compilation. You'll see it. Anyway, this is a guy that doesn't want to even get breathed on in basketball. How would he take the physicality and the continual punishment, even in a game like football, which has, to this point, really, they've done their utmost to take a lot of the physicality out of it in terms of player safety and all that stuff. But how would he take that? Because let's say let's look at it this way. LeBron James came into the NBA in 2003, fresh out of high school, right? Now, obviously, we know you can't do that in the NFL. You have to play at least, well, you have to be at least 3 years removed from your last high school football game. So let's add 3 years onto that, right? So LeBron is then 18. That's 2006, right? The NBA, the NFL, excuse me, at that point hadn't completely gone over to the player safety mode. The game was still very, very physical. They hadn't yet started legislating all the big hits out. You saw segments on the NFL TV shows like Jacked Up. Big hits, huge hits were celebrated. They weren't flagged all over the place. Let's say LeBron as a tight end at 6'9", 260, right? He's coming across the middle. At that size, you got a guy like Ray Lewis who literally said, you know, he loves to hit a man and take a piece of his soul. So you get a guy like Ray Lewis at that height, your entire torso is exposed, right? Ray Lewis is going to blast you. He's going to take your breath away with every hit. And it's not just him, right? There's a lot of other guys who are really delivering, those type of punishing blows in football back then. So I say all that to say is I don't think LeBron has the makeup mentally. I don't think he's got the warrior spirit. You hear me talk about that a lot. When it comes to physical sports, warrior spirit is extremely important to me. And I don't think LeBron is the type of guy who's got that in terms of football to be able to, take those hits continually, game in, game out, as well as practice in, practice out, right? He's just not built like that. So LeBron in the NFL, nah. And again, not to mention the fact that we've never seen a skilled position player that tall. It just probably wouldn't work out. So my answer to would LeBron have been great in the NFL, despite the fact that Jerry Jones allegedly offered him a contract? And quick side note, I think Jerry Jones, we know he's more about box office than winning, right? He loves the flash, he loves the attention, he loves the big splash move. And I think that's why he offered LeBron a contract. But yeah, again, my answer, would LeBron have made it in the NFL? No. So there we are. So speaking of LeBron, we're beginning to see more of the quote unquote player empowerment attitude of the NBA leaking into the NFL, right? Star players, namely big name quarterbacks, want more input, right? And where that bothers me is, listen, I'm not saying you don't know the game if you're a star quarterback or a star player. I'm just saying if the organization wants to take your input into account, cool. If they don't, that's not your job. Your job is to maximize what you do in the film room, in practice, in the training room, and on the field. That's your job. Leave putting together rosters and game plans and all that. Leave that to the people who get paid for it. Because if it doesn't work out, you as the star player, you don't want that share of the responsibility. You're going to be ready to blame it on the coaches in the front office. So stop, complaining and asking for input and you want this and you want that. If they come to you and they ask you, great. But that's not your role. Your role is to maximize what you can do, practice, film room, training room, and on the field on Sunday. That's it, bottom line. So this whole player empowerment thing, if you wanted that, you should have been in the NBA, not the NFL. You're in the wrong sport for that, okay? So what does the NFL do about it? I think it's a very slippery slope because if you start giving too much of that, it's really hard to take it back. But I don't know that the NFL is going to go that far. And the other thing is, you see some of these big name quarterbacks, they want this. How much input do you want when you, as a big name quarterback, are taking up such a huge chunk of the salary cap? Like you want that, but then you still want to be in there saying, well, I want this and I want that. Well, how are you doing that when you went to the bargaining table and got every cent that you could under the, available salary structure? So, that's just me. All right, next up. You know what? Real quick. Normally I try to do like my top games of the previous week. I'm not going to do that this week. I'm trying to make this quick. I'm just giving some thoughts on how I feel about what's happening in the NBA, et cetera. Next topic, rookie quarterbacks are really struggling this year. And it's funny because maybe over the last 5 years or so, we've really seen young quarterbacks have a lot of success early, for the most part. But what's interesting, this year, the rookie QBs are struggling much more as opposed to those recent seasons I just mentioned. This year, rookie quarterbacks are 1-10 combined in their starts, right? And so you got to ask yourself, like, what's the deal with that? Other than, of course, rookie quarterbacks are on bad teams because when you get drafted high and you start right away, generally your team is bad, right? So they're on bad teams, a lot of bad old lines. A lot of them may not have the best weapons, but is it's an interesting thing to look at, like we said in the last few years. For instance, when Andrew Luck came into the league, obviously the Colts were terrible because I think the what was the thing, suck for luck, right? So basically they were bad on purpose so they get that number one pick. Then they got him, and his rookie year they went 11-5. Now I'm not saying that they were necessarily world beaters, but to go from the number one pick in the draft, I think like 3-13 or something like that, maybe 2-14 to 11-5, that's a huge turnaround. And a whole lot of that is attributable to Andrew Luck. And a quick side note, why people are saying Trevor Lawrence is the best prospect they've seen since Andrew Luck is beyond me. Now, I'm not saying the guy's a bum. I'm not saying he's going to be a bum, but I don't know. I don't see the Andrew Luck analogy. Now, part of it could be Andrew Luck with David Shaw at Stanford had legitimate NFL coaching. David Shaw has NFL pedigree, and he didn't necessarily have all those elite weapons the way Trevor Lawrence had at Clemson, right? So Andrew Luck had to learn to play a pro game, and he had to kind of do more with less in terms of the weapons that he was throwing to, et cetera, et cetera. Meanwhile, Trevor Lawrence, if you go back and watch a lot of Clemson games, most of his receivers were running free, right? So you just had to put it out there, try to eliminate the mistakes. He had a ton of 5 stars around him. I think last year Clemson had 11 of the 16 5-star recruits in the entire Atlantic Coast Conference, right? So again, not saying Trevor Lawrence is a bum, not saying he's going to be a bum. He definitely has physical tools, etc. He can make all the throws, but I never understood why everyone was so enthused about him saying, he's the best prospect since Andrew Luck. I disagreed with that, but hey, so be it. That's me. I'm not a scout. There's a lot I don't know, obviously. Okay, next. Has the rest of the NFL caught up to the Kansas City Chiefs? So the Chiefs, for the first time in a long time, they're under 500. They're 1-2. Definitely the first time in the Mahomes era. They've lost 2 games in September. Going into this year, they hadn't lost any games in September, and Mahomes hadn't thrown any picks. But now they're 1-2. They're at the bottom of the AFC West, and this is the team that a lot of people pick to come out of the AFC and go to the Super Bowl again. Obviously, Andy Reid is one of the best offensive coaches in the league. The team has tons of weapons. Now, the defense is terrible this year, so they're definitely suffering. But again, it's early. It's only 3 games in. They can right the ship. But it is interesting to see. And you got to wonder, maybe, I doubt it, but maybe the rest of the league is catching up with the Chiefs. And, defensive coordinators in this league, man, they're good. Now, we know that, of course, defense are handcuffed and hamstrung because the league wants as much high scoring as it can be, as it can have. But at the same time, these defensive coordinators, they earn their checks too, and they got pride, and they want to get paid, and they want to keep their jobs. So they're not theoretically going to let the Chiefs just do whatever they want every game, right? I want to see has the rest of the league caught up to him? It should be interesting. Although I will say, providing he's even a reasonable facsimile of himself, they grabbed another weapon with Josh Gordon. So let's see how that goes. Yes, Josh Gordon is back in the league. He's fulfilled all his suspensions, et cetera, et cetera. So let's see if the guy can stay clean. His freakish physical ability is what keeps giving him chances. Derek Carr, Raiders quarterback, playing out of his freaking mind right now. He is probably having the best year of his career so far. Again, only 3 games, averaging 400 yards passing per game and leading the league. And I think the Raiders are 3-0. So we knew coming into the season that John Gruden was, well, we didn't know. I think our assumption was that he was on the hot seat. He needs to make the playoffs and maybe make a little run. I mean, yeah, he's got the 10-year big contract, 10-year, $100 million, I believe. So it would be tough to fire him because there'd be a lot of dead money to pay out, and then you still got to pay a new coach. But still, this is a results-oriented business, right? So they want to see that. But Derek Carr is really, really playing well again, leading the league in passing. So want to see what he does going forward. Basically, we're there 17 games this year. They're 3 games in, so not even a fifth of the way done yet, but so far so good if you're a Raider fan or if you're a Raider. Matt Stafford and the LA Rams. How good is this team, right? The marquee matchup last week was obviously the Rams and the Bucks, defending Super Bowl champion Bucks, who return all 22 starters. but that defense doesn't look nearly as dominant as it looked down the stretch last year. Um, Basically, the Rams, huge game. Interesting stat. With Sean McVay as head coach, the Rams have never lost with a halftime lead. That's interesting because we saw how hyper he was, how excited he was. I guess he knew the stat when the Rams were going into the tunnel at halftime because they had the lead and they have never lost, when leading at halftime with him as coach. So Sean McVay is obviously giddy. Matt Stafford is out there slicing and dicing, wheeling and dealing, really doing his thing with the Rams, and they look like a team to be reckoned with. Obviously, the defense is great. You got Jalen Ramsey on the back end. You got Aaron Donald up front, and then, of course, the offense is great. Matt Stafford and Cooper Kupp is a real connection. And then, of course, you still have the ageless wonder deep threat, Deshaun Jackson. So you got to wonder just how good are the Rams. The Bucks, I mentioned, they return all 22 starters from their championship team, first time in the modern era, I believe. And so you got to wonder how good are they? They looked really good the first couple games, but they hadn't necessarily played an elite team yet. And when they did, they lost. And they were down by as many as 17 in that game against the Rams. Brady played relatively well, but if we say that a lot of those passing yards were empty calories when it was Dak doing it, we got to be objective and say the same thing with Brady, right? He tried to throw him back into the game, but it didn't work out, right? So over 400 yards passing, but empty calories, right? That's what the Rams kind of playing, keeping everything in front of them, nothing cheap, nothing deep, right? That's what we hear. So you wonder, of course, the Bucks have only lost one game. You wonder though, with the trouble that we're seeing defensively from them, is this a team that can repeat? You wonder that, right? Um, Quick note, huge game this week in terms of storyline. Obviously, the Bucks are returning. The Bucks are not returning. They are going to be visiting Foxborough to play the New England Patriots on Sunday night. Tom Brady, for the first time ever, will be a visitor at Gillette Stadium. That should be amazing. So, obviously, the first stage of the divorce won by Brady. He won the Super Bowl in his first year with another team. Bill Belichick didn't even make the playoffs. So, this is stage two. We're gonna see, who comes out. Obviously, Brady, I'm sure, will have some jitters. He'll have a lot of emotions. He's gonna play in front of a crowd that probably both loves him and hates him now, right? Mac Jones, I'm sure, will have a lot of jitters as well. He's going to be playing against the GOAT. And but Bill Belichick will have his guys prepared. This is one thing we know. So should be interesting. Should be interesting. Cowboys and Eagles. So Cowboys smoked the Eagles, I think 41-21 on Monday night. And so this is interesting. Why is this interesting? When you hear me talk about football, you hear me constantly talk about the tried and true ways of winning football games. What's the tried and true ways of winning football games, guys? Say it with me. You know what it is. Stop the run the ball. Stop the run the ball. Why do I say that? I don't say that because I like the way it sounds. I say that because it works, right? Dak Prescott has been throwing for tons of yards since last year. Then he got hurt. Then he opened up this season throwing for tons of yards. But guess what? When Dak Prescott is throwing for all those yards, the team loses. How do I know that? I know that because the Dallas Cowboys in the Dak Prescott era have a record of, drumroll please, 26-0 when they run the football more than they throw it in any given game. Let me say that again. The Cowboys in the Dak Prescott era have a record of 26-0, meaning they have never lost in a game in the Dak Prescott era when they run the football more than they throw it. How long have you heard me say, listen, Dak he's very good, he's a leader, blah, 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 all that. But I didn't believe that this was a guy who deserved the kind of money that he got. And why not? Because even when he puts up big numbers, they don't win. They win when they run the football. So why would you pay a guy that kind of money who hasn't proven that when he puts up numbers, it makes a team win? Why is it so hard to understand that running the football still equals success? I know it's not sexy. I get it. But if they clearly need the running game to be successful, why did Jerry Jones give Dak all that money? I mean, come on. It seems so obvious. Run the ball, stop the run. When the Cowboys do that, they do not lose 26-0. Okay. And what I find so interesting, you look at a guy like Dak Prescott, right? When they win, he gets credit for managing the game, for being a leader, for not making mistakes, not turning the ball over. Now, when you get a guy like Baker Mayfield, right? In a similar situation, he's got weapons around him. He's got a great O-line. He's got a great running game, right? No one believes in Baker, and they say, well, he's just managing the team. He's a game manager, and we don't know if when the game's on the line, Baker can do what it takes to win. And I'm not sure you pay him, but you pay Dak, and you tell me how much you believe in Dak and how much of a great leader he is and a great quarterback and this, that, and the third. What's the difference? What's the difference, really? Let me say it again. The Dallas Cowboys in the Dak Prescott era are 26-0 when they run the football more than they throw it. Just something to think about. All right. A couple quick notes, a couple more quick notes in the NFL before I let you get out of here. You know, how far can the Baltimore Ravens go this year, right? Lamar Jackson, we know, is all world. He's already had a couple Superman performances this year. And then, of course, you got Legatron, Justin Tucker, who just set the record for the longest kick in history, 66-yarder, to beat the Detroit Lions last week. By the way, the Detroit Lions, we all laughed when before the season at his introductory press conference, Dan Campbell, new head coach, was talking about fighting kneecaps and fighting and this, that, and the third. But guess what, though? He's got those Lions really, really being competitive. So good for them. And when you continue to compete like that, the wins will come, right? You're building a culture. So that's good. But back to Baltimore. Obviously, Lamar Jackson's all world. You got Justin Tucker. They've had tons of injuries. They've got injuries on the O-line. They had injuries in the receiving corps, injuries to their top three running backs. But they don't look anywhere near as dominant as they did 2 years ago when Lamar Jackson won not undisputed, but he won MVP by sweeping the votes. But they still look good, right? They're still 2-1. They're still playing good football. So you wonder how far can they go. But the thing about that is wide receivers Miles Boykin and rookie Rashad Bateman both came off IR. So this week or next week, they'll be back in the game. That adds two more weapons for Lamar Jackson in the passing game. So, maybe as the health continues to improve, so will the team. So we'll see. Steelers, you talk about the Ravens, got to talk about the Steelers, right? You wonder, this kind of has to be the end for Big Ben Roethlisberger, right? He's got a Hall of Fame career. He's got 2 championships. A lot of guys don't have 1 championship. He can't go downfield anymore. He's not mobile anymore. The O-line there is terrible. They can't run the football anymore. When it's on his arm, he can't get the job done. I believe the Steelers are now 1-2. This probably should be it for Big Ben. I know he loves playing the game. I know he wants to continue to collect checks. I get all that, but Big Ben, it's time to hang it up. And not because I'm a Ravens fan, but because it's time to hang it up. You physically can't do it anymore, right? Okay, final point. Sam Darnold having a huge turnaround this season. I was never a believer in Sam Darnold, even at USC. I thought that while he was good, I didn't think he was nearly as good as they made him out to be. He made a lot. A lot was made of the Rose Bowl victory over Penn State, in which he played extremely well. But that following season, he didn't play that great. I never understood the big hype over Sam Darnold. Then he goes to New York. He has 3 terrible years there. Now, Adam Gase probably has a whole lot to do with that. Just overall bad organization, not much in terms of weaponry, coaching, etc. Now, everybody thought he was pretty much washed, except now he goes to Carolina. He's got offensive coordinator Joe Brady and head coach Matt Rule. Matt Rule is known as a program builder from his time in college. He kind of built Temple into a national defensive powerhouse. Well, not a national, but one of the best defensive teams statistically in college football. Then he goes to Baylor after the Art Briles scandal and kind of really does a good job of getting them in position to be, at one point a top 5 team. So did a great job there. And then now he's in Carolina. He's got the head coaching position. He'll be there for a little bit. And the Panthers are really humming. They are 3-0 this season. And Sam Darnold is playing really good quarterback. He's cut down on the mistakes. He's completing 70% of his passes, right in there. So really playing the best quarterback of his professional life and some of the best quarterback in the league this year. Again, very early. Once teams start getting the tape on him, maybe start trying to take away some of the things he likes to do. But it's I love to see how coaching and schemes, often can make a difference in player production. So we got to keep watching Sam Darnold and see, is it an early blip, or has he really, with a change of scenery in the right place with the right coaching, better coaching, um, begun to realize some of that potential that a lot of people thought he had coming into the NFL. All right. So that's it. Thanks for taking the time. I think this was a pretty quick one. We'll be back next week. Definitely, if there's any game you're going to watch, obviously it's going to be the Sunday nighter, the Bucks and the New England Patriots. Tom Brady's first return to Gillette Stadium as a visitor. Definitely looking forward to that. All right. Have a good one. Peace.